podcast. I'm your host, Robert Gaines. I have guest Michelle Jensen with me, two-time interviewee here on the podcast. She's part of the alumni here. Michelle, how are you doing?
Good. How are you doing today?
Good, good. I wanted to mention that when you first came on, I wasn't very confident. Not that I'm greatly confident as an interviewer now, but I was less hesitant to ask questions about money and metrics and different things. Some people, guests don't find that a comfortable topic, but you post very openly about that on your LinkedIn, and I always look at those posts. If they come by my feed, I'm very interested in that, and I hadn't really thought about monetization myself as a channel. I thought, well, I'll build the audience first and then I'll worry about monetization. But now, I'm very upfront. I've sunk enough money into the podcast now. I'm like, okay, it's time for me to get a check. So I've been soaking up all your great information about monetization. And I really appreciate that.
Awesome. I originally started doing that because I saw somebody on Threads post their breakdown. And I was like, oh, this would be fun. Like keep track for myself. If even if nobody else cares, it'll be, a reminder for me to look back and be like, okay, this is where you were and this is where you are now. Um, but I really did it also partly because I had seen so many creators. I remember there was a creator I met years ago that she had this awesome website and she was getting invited by Guinness to spend St. Patty's Day in Dublin and like all this stuff that I was like, this seems so cool. And then I met her in person and she like basically told me she couldn't pay her own rent. And I want to be like real with people what this is. I enjoy it. I like being a travel blogger, but I also like am not a millionaire. Like, like I want to give people proper expectations of if they're either getting into this or they're just curious, like what it's like. So that's really why I continually put those up a monthly post and then I do one at the end of the year as well, just because, yeah, I feel like so many people we have such an idea of like what content creators are because there's this like small 1% that like make astronomical amounts and then the rest of us are like people like me who are making like a good amount but like I'm not gonna buy a house from this yet so
No, that's great that you give a realistic view of things because I talk a lot about well, mostly in my personal conversations, not on the podcast, but I'll openly say it too. I talk a lot about necessary illusions, and sometimes we tell people things. I mean, in any course, anything that out there that they're selling to coach you to, an exposition, come here, and then these results are going to happen. And of course, they always emphasize the most rarest, most unusual 1% of the results because just like a podcast, if somebody said in the beginning and at the beginning of 2024, Robert, it's going to take you, you're going to be a year into this and you're going to have less than 200 subscribers on your channel. I would go click, I'm going to go do something else. Had somebody told me, and of course, there was no way to know exactly what it was going to take because some people turn on the mic. And I know people that got monetized after their third video, you know, being a business content YouTuber, that's not going to happen. But there are certain types of channels and certain types of content that gets an immense amount of attention. And your stuff is a lot more fun. As a travel blogger, you're telling these amazing stories. And something I didn't ask before that I wanted to ask this time, do you pick a destination first and then kind of reverse engineer and do try to set up some deals and stack the opportunities, or do you do a lot of outreach and then try to put things together? Because I never really understood how that process comes together.
yeah, so I pay most for my travel.
Mhm.
I'm not one of those people that like gets big deals and stuff like that to go to some destination. And that's mostly because I haven't put myself in that because I'm super behind on writing posts. But when I spent 4.5 months in Europe last year, and before I even left the country of the United States, I reached out to some hotels with places I knew I was going with like dates and be like, hi, I'll be here from the first to the 10th or something like that. Can you do 2 to 3 nights? And I wound up getting one night in Zurich, half off for 3 nights in Copenhagen, I think, or maybe it might have been longer than 3 nights, but I know I got half off on that one. I got 2 free nights in Berlin, 2 or 3 nights in Prague. I feel like I'm missing one. Um, if I am, I can't remember what it was, but yeah, all those were like heading out. Oh yeah. Slovakia. I had 3 free nights in Slovakia. I knew I was like forgetting one. But yeah, all those I reached out ahead of time and just said, hey, these are the dates. This is what I'd like to do. This is what I can deliver. Let me know if you're interested. And sometimes you don't get any answers, and sometimes you get unsuspecting answers. Like for example, Prague, I stayed at like a place that was like $400 a night. Like I would never be normally paying that. But it was a super cool place because it was a 700-year-old monastery, if I remember correctly, that half of it the Marriott has taken over, half of it the monks still live in. We got to meet some of the monks. We got to go to like their library. They have a brewery in the basement that was like originally created by the monks. We had a tour of the place. I mean, it was just like it was an experience in itself. Like it was like an experience inside of Prague that was like one separately I had no idea about. And that was just, yeah, simply I reached out and I was like, hi, I would like to do this. And then we're like, okay.
Wow.
So
And Europe is amazing because I think this was in Germany. It might have been somewhere else, but I was inside of a shoe store that was older than this country. It's older than the entire history of the US, and it's been a shoe shop the whole time, and it's hard to, you can read about history, you can go to classes about it, but to breathe the air, to see that castle that was stormed in the 1400s, and it brings it alive, and all the culture and the food and the experiences. It's amazing. Now, I have to ask you, when you went to Copenhagen, did you fly in or did you take the ship from
I
Germany?
flew in from Prague.
Okay. The reason
Yeah.
why I ask is the two times I went to Copenhagen, I was stationed in Germany when I was in the army. So I did as much travel as I could, but I went to a lot of the northern countries like the Netherlands and Copenhagen. But I got there from northern Germany, and they just drive the train straight onto the ship. I had never seen, I mean, this is a massive train, but it was a massive ship, and the train just rolls straight on to the inside of the boat. And then as it takes off, you just get out of the train and then get on top of the deck of the boat like the Titanic, looking out. And that was an amazing experience. I don't think we have anything like that here.
Yeah, I don't think I've even heard of that. Yeah, we wound up flying to Copenhagen because I was in Prague before that. So I didn't do as much like boat travel as I think I normally would have. At that point of the trip I was with a friend, so we were kind of like just bopping around quickly. But yeah, that sounds amazing. I don't even think I knew that was a thing.
Well, you've got a cluster of skills that makes the travel blogging perfect for you because you're also an SEO content writer, which is really connected to the travel blogging in a lot of ways. Um, what do you think, other than the SEO part of it? Obviously, search engine optimization is important if you're delivering that for clients to try to boost them in the Google search. But what other writing skills do you think it's important in general for people to develop, whether their aspiration is just regular content creation or they want to be a travel blogger?
That's a good question. There's actually a travel blogging course I've been taking recently, by a woman named Bucket List Bree is her website. And that has helped me refine my writing because writing for like AAA, for instance, versus my blog are two different things. AAA, I'm writing kind of a generic guide of like, here's 15 things to do in Paris. It has nothing to do with my opinion. My travel blog is like, I did this thing, I liked it or not. Like, I get to have an opinion at the end of the day and say, I didn't like it because XYZ, or I did like it because XYZ. Her course has really like enforced in me more of like being sensory. Like, how did I feel about the place? What did it smell like? What did it look like? Also, like giving an opinion, because sometimes forget, I'll be like, I didn't like the thing, but I'll forget the because. Or if I like the thing, I forget the because. Or even if it's not even like, sometimes I'll be like, I did it this way and I won't tell you because it was cheapest or fastest or whatever. So I've actually had to like refine my own writing to go back, okay, give people a reason for this, whether they agree with it or not. Like maybe I say like, oh, it's great for adults. Maybe they're looking for something for kids that's not for them, but at least I'm like telling you the reason it's good or bad. So that's one of the things I feel like especially as a travel blogger, that you need to do, because that's why people are coming to you, right? Because they don't want just the generic whatever either AI is going to give them, or, and this is no hate to my other job is Travel A, but they're not giving you an opinion, they're just giving you a list. So you have to make sure you give that anecdote. And again, like it might turn people away if they're like, oh, this is terrible for kids, I'm not going to take my kids to this. But at least you're directing towards your audience. So
I think that sensory writing, Michelle, is going to become a lot more popular and a lot more in demand because of how cold AI is. It's really good about facts. And I talk to AI. Sometimes I prep for guests, which is a new because I have the paid version of ChatGPT and my agent is Eva. She has a name. And we talk, we debate, and I'll say, well, what are 10 good questions you think based on what you can find about this person on the internet? And we'll go back and say, no, that's a very generic question, Eva. You can do better than that. And we go back and forth, but it's I'm a fan of AI. I use it for the podcast. I use it for a lot of different things, but there are things that I understand about human psychology that machine, even with all of its gifts, there are just ways that I know to talk to people and ask things that a computer's just, at least not at this point, is going to be able to understand. So I think the people that are consuming your content, maybe 95% of them are just simply living vicariously through you. So they're consuming your content as an entertainment experience, whereas maybe 5% actually have the time and the budget and they want that advice so that they can use it as actionable information. But at the end of the day, it still has to be exciting and because they have everything else is vying for their attention. They've got TikTok, they've got YouTube, and the written word can sweep people away. And you're sitting there in that cubicle on your lunch break with your tuna salad there, but you can pick up and read a travel blog, and now all of a sudden you're in this, you're on the Rhine River or you're in the Wine Valley, and it's amazing.
yeah, and I agree. I mean, I use AI similarly, like mine for like a fact checker. So like for instance, I'm auditing all my posts. And for instance, Notre Dame, we all know, burned down famously a few
Yeah.
years
Oh
ago.
my gosh.
So
Yeah.
I had gone before that. So my post was like, you can visit Notre Dame. And then a couple years ago when it burned down, I revised it and said, yeah, you can go look at it, but you're not going to enter that building. But then recently, when I was auditing it, I basically put it into, I use Claude. I like that one better. And basically wrote like, is there any inaccuracies or misinformation in this post? And fed it the post. And it was like, yeah, Notre Dame opened again as of September. Like, so I use it as like kind of like my assistant to be like, okay, let's just make sure Michelle's homework is still relevant.
No, that
Uh,
makes that makes great sense. So it's not just evergreen, and I always forget this word, Michelle. There's another word it's a very fresh word. I'd not heard it until about a year ago. It's the new synonym for evergreen, but the concept is that documents will become living documents now. So in other words, you write your travel blog, and then there's going to be some AI there constantly making sure that it's relevant. So if you mention something that's outdated or doesn't exist, there's going to be some intelligence that actively updates that, and that's going to make that information perpetually relevant. So it's still I only heard it in this really niche environment, but I know and whatever, if I can think of the word before this interview is over, but I think we're going to hear that word a lot more because, we're used to, well, at least me, I grew up in this era of extremely static information. The school books didn't change except every 5, 6, 7 years because it was expensive. And now you don't have a physical book anymore, and the PDF educational material gets updated every year, sometimes every quarter, And so we're in this real temporal existence where we're in a constant state of flux. So I think the information out there is going to be living and breathing, on its own in the future if you pay for the subscription to have your content, constantly updated. Well, I noticed too when you were giving the breakdown of what you make. So Amazon affiliate looks like it was a large part of the income. Is that generally the case?
Yeah, it was last year. In the last couple months, it's taken a downturn. Now, I don't know the specific cause for that. My inclination is people's budgets are getting tighter, but also people are being more careful where they spend their wallet. So I've actually been applying to more affiliate programs to try to get into other companies But it's strangely weird. Like I have like one bag that I sold over 2,000 of on Amazon. It's an anti-theft purse. I had a 10% conversion rate. So basically, like anybody who was on my blog who clicked through the link to Amazon for this bag, 10% of them bought it, which is like really high
That's
compared to
really high.
um other products I've sold. And I reached out to them directly because I was like, well, why go through Amazon? Just cut the middleman out and just sell it directly through them. And they were like, we don't have an affiliate program. And I'm like, why? Like, don't you want to make more money? Like, if we cut out Amazon, I just go straight to you guys. But they
Right,
weren't
right.
interested. So it's a strange game because yeah, I feel like I keep trying to be like, hey, I like your company. Please, let's work together. And some companies are just like, nah.
Yeah, and of course, when I hear that, because I have to pitch, I pitch companies to get their people on. If there's products that I'm very loyal to, and I would love to platform and give them love because there's some really great, especially the some of the free software out there that every time I buy the new version, I mean, get the new version for free, I always donate to the development team, like Audacity. I use that for auto edit. Would love to have those people on and say, what a great development team they are. But I never can get to the person that's the one that can get on camera. So the person that's probably answering your email, I assume, isn't probably the person that could authorize that deal. That's the tough part, especially in this digital era. You can never get to the right person. So I wonder if it'd be worth mining a little bit on LinkedIn to find somebody a little higher on the chain to ask that question to at that anti-theft company.
Yeah, I mean, possibly. Because, yeah, I was surprised when I reached out to them and I was like, look, I can send you like because Amazon will give you a breakdown of what you've sold. It'll even tell you how many returns, how much you commission, how much people paid. It gives you all the details. So I was like, I can give you this like information so you know that I'm not just like making this up and just, I'm gonna sell like one purse for you guys. But they like just weren't interested. But yeah, that it is something interesting. And I just want to loop back quickly to your question before about staying relevant. You kind of have to nowadays. You can't have static posts anymore. Because, for instance, I had a blog post on Athens. It was like a two day itinerary in Athens, 2 or 3 days. And I talked a lot about this pass that I had gotten when I went with my family that covered like the Parthenon, the Roman Agora, like the top 5 or 6 attractions. Well, that post did really well, made me a boatload of money, and then it fell off one day, and I was like, what happened? Well, the pass is no longer available, and it includes different attractions now, and it's also like 2 or 3 times more money. I don't know what they're doing over in Athens. That seemed like a terrible deal to me, but Google correctly was like, this pass doesn't exist anymore. We're not going to rank her number one. So I fell off page number one. So you kind of, in order to be in the game, you need to be relevant. But of course, the challenge with being like a travel blogger and remaining relevant is like I'm not constantly in Athens and all that stuff. So I'm always kind of like paying a little bit of a catch up. So that's all I
I
wanted to
get
add.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Michelle. And I envision, I don't know if this is an aspiration for you, but you can't be everywhere at once. And I was thinking, to scale this up, Michelle would be like a central hub, and she's got bloggers working for her. Like you go get the deals, and of course you could still travel and do your hit the main spots. But I thought, yeah, you could be a resource. And have, the sun would never set on your empire, so to speak. You'd have bloggers, all around the globe because the experience that you've had going through all this and working for these major brands and brokering some of these deals, it's got incredible value. Now, obviously, the economy is changing. Can you talk about that a little bit? Because I know you've got your eye on the ball and you're watching those trends. What are you seeing happening for 2026 and beyond? What's working? What's not working? What do you think might start working in the future?
It's a kind of a dicey time right now because Google just changed an update in early January. So most bloggers I know are just struggling to like get people to their page right now. But I know like a lot of people obviously like are worried about travel and stuff like that just because the economy right now. So I'm kind of just like currently auditing all my posts and like updating those things like, hey, Notre Dame isn't open now, good things. In hopes that like things start turning around. And as a travel blogger, it's usually slower at this time anyway. So I clarify that between like March and maybe August or September are like hotter times because people, even if you don't have kids or not, you probably go on vacation in summer, right? You're probably heading to some warmer place from wherever you live. You're probably traveling in June, July, August kind of thing. So those are like always the better times. Um, and even times like there's like kind of like a joke between Christmas and New Year's. The bloggers are like nothing's gonna happen. Like everything's gonna be dead because everybody's wherever they're gonna be wherever they're gonna be with their family. So kind of like you kind of have to expect that. But yeah, like it's I don't know what Google did recently, but none of us are happy right now. I've
So
been
you
in that
see,
community and
so they're
yeah.
all chatting. They're all there's that's the word on the street. Something's going on.
Yeah, the word on the street is yeah, it's not where none of us are happy with Google right now. And even Pinterest, I actually checked my analytics last night with Pinterest because I was like, well, maybe Pinterest is stable, and that even has not been stable recently. Um, so yeah, I don't know what's going on. But yeah, I'm just continuing like audit old posts and kind of like dive in with this course that I took and be more, like I said, intentional about what I'm recommending and why I'm recommending it and like putting my personal opinion out there. And one thing I've been doing more recently is I used to not like put a lot of photos of myself on the blog, and that's just because like I didn't feel like it was about me, and I'm also not like a most big photo shoot persons. And because of AI, I've started to like the first image I usually put is a picture with me. So that they know like, hey, this person wrote this. Not just some AI that like spat it out and is gonna be like, regurgitation of Wikipedia or something like that. But yeah, I don't really know where it's hard to say where it's all going as far as either travel or travel blogging in general because it's such a topsy-turvy time and AI keeps, throwing things around and yeah, I don't know.
Well, everybody's looking for a deal. Not to promote my book, but in my book, I talked about Coupon Mom because she was, you think about Groupon and then Coupon Mom, 2008, that's all anybody could talk about. Groupon and Coupon Mom. Everybody was trying to save a buck because the economy was a little rough then. And then, the house,
Yeah.
right, that was just off the heels of the housing crisis. So these bloggers that were talking about coupons and saving money, they became king. I mean, they rose right to the top because everybody was on a budget and they were trying to figure things out. And one thing that I look at, I don't do it now because I don't travel as much, but before when I was traveling, one of the things I looked at was how strong is the dollar in this country? And people don't, I don't hear enough people talking about that. It's not exciting. It's not fun to talk about, but whoa, yeah. I mean, there are places right now, there's always somewhere in the world the dollar is very powerful. Now, that doesn't mean that there's going to be other deals there, but I think that on the top of people's mind is going to be, they're probably looking for more budget travel. But I'm sure you look at that. You look at Google keywords at what people are looking for and the content that they're most interested in, like trend analysis and things like that. Is that part of your research too?
Not big trend analysis, more I do a lot of keyword analysis. So for instance, let's say I was auditing a post the other day and I had one on Hever Castle, which is Anne Boleyn's childhood home. And I like that post, but I was realizing all the people were ranking for it had pictures inside. When I went, I'm pretty sure they didn't allow pictures. So I had something that was never going to rank, right? Because they have so much more information simply because they know what it looks like inside and can show you in the blog post. So I instead went and keyword research and I was like, okay, how can I provide this information? Because I still have this content for Hever Castle that I wrote, years ago now. And turn that into like a 11-day trips from London post, one of which was Hever Castle. So for me, I know a lot of people who do the trend stuff like, things to do in, Los Angeles in February of this month, which as of recording this, is February 13th. I just like it's such a long game with Google that like searching trends, like you can take 6 months to rank sometimes. Like I can write a post today and sometimes it's not going to rank until what's 6 months from now, like August. So it just, for me, it doesn't feel, if I was doing social media, I 100% would because that's all social media is trends. But yeah, for Google, it's just not worth it because yeah, I've seen stuff where I posted it and then 6 months later, it miraculously shows up on page one and it's been sitting in the middle of nowhere up to that point. So yeah, I instead look for like, okay, if this thing isn't working for me because I don't either have the information or it's just too competitive, I like try to like find another way to like switch that. Um, just because it's still content I have, it's still content I like. Like I enjoyed going to Heber Castle. I just know I'm not gonna beat somebody who has a much more comprehensive post than me because they went at a later time and were able to provide photos and more information. So
And Gary Vee is a big proponent of repurposing and repackaging content. And, for us in the podcasting world, usually the only option we have is just to do the shorts. But now I'm doing these lives, and the live is going to later get re-uploaded as an edited, like a pre-recorded. So it has two lives technically, and then that edited episode's gonna go through RSS. So then this is gonna go on the audio only platforms like Audible. And sometimes a video does really well, or it does not very well, and then it does really great in audio only. So it's giving these second and third lives, and then I come out with the shorts on YouTube, which sometimes then brings people back. But before I was just grinding out these, the long form interviews and not thinking about repackaging and repurposing. And it's a lot of work when you're not repurposing. So I think people that create content definitely should listen a little bit to Gary Vee, because he's like, make a long piece of content and turn it into 32 different things. It could be a blog post, it could be a photo, it could be but back to your point about the photo, I think that's another part of this age of AI. And plus, we connect with the character. I don't like seeing myself. I have to sit and edit these videos and look at myself and hear myself talking. I have to put myself in the thumbnail because vidIQ told me to. And but I also know that when I look at other people's, because I'm off every social media except for LinkedIn and YouTube, those are my only outlets. And when people write really interesting things on LinkedIn, and I'm like, wow, that's really brilliant. I look at their other posts, and then I actually look for an images button because I want to see them. Like, what do they do? I get interested in the character, and that's just
yeah.
how we are. Same thing. The biggest difference between a good movie and bad movie. Did you identify or have some feelings for one of the characters in the film? If the answer to that's no, you probably didn't enjoy that film.
Yeah. No, I've said that. I remember years ago when I used to work in TV, I was at a conference or something, and somebody said that they believed, and I guess some people believe opposite, that it's more important to have an interesting character than an interesting plot, which I agree with. You take somebody like a really beloved character, we'll go with like Jack Sparrow, right? We all like we Jack Sparrow can be in a room with nothing and you'd still watch it, right? You go an interesting plot, but somebody you don't care about, you probably don't care if they succeed or not, you know?
No,
Like it could be the most thrilling plot, and you're like, nah.
even the Twilight series, I didn't read it, but I read a lot about it because it was so successful, and I love to know what did that writer do to create that? And Bella almost is not described at all, and Edward is described in vast detail. So the purpose of the book is almost to put you in Bella's position, and you're experiencing that through her eyes. That's why they don't describe her a lot, because they want you in that driver's seat, witnessing all of these amazing things happening. And I think that's interesting. But for us in podcasts and travel blogging, people may be interested in our journey and what we're doing. And a matter of fact, I'm shooting a lot more solo content about how the sausage is made, so to speak, on podcasting. And that's doing pretty good. Some people are curious about that because I made a lot of mistakes. I spent money on things that I shouldn't have. Have you ever spent money on things you shouldn't have with regard to your craft?
As far as blogging, I mean, the only thing I can feel like I regret sometimes spending money on is like a tool to try it out. And then I'm like, this tool sucks. Like, I wish it was like a 30-day return policy because there not always is. Sometimes there is, and you're like, oh, good, okay, I can return this. But yeah, I've like paid for it. Like SEMrush is a big like SEO platform that people really love. And I've tried it, and it's just way too complicated for me. Like, there's just so many bells and whistles, and I'm sure if I knew how to use it properly, I might be able to get something out of it. But it was like somebody used a phrase like you need like a Honda when somebody else gives you a Ferrari, and I don't need the Ferrari. I don't need all the bells and whistles. I just need the car that's going to get me there successfully. And I spent like it was like at least over $100, maybe $200 or something for a month, and I was like, this is a waste of money. I don't know what I'm doing with this
That's a lot of
thing.
money. Yeah.
So,
You need
uh,
SEMrush Lite if it's out there. And I keep hearing SEMrush keeps getting brought up, but I don't know what it does, to be honest.
it gives you all your information for your website, but like I said, like I don't need that much, you know? Like if I was, Facebook or something, maybe I'd need that where I'm like some big massive conglomerate, but like, for me, I just kind of need to know what keywords are working and like what my other competitors are doing and tracking keywords, and that's about it. Like I don't need anything more complicated than that. And I use their alternative, which is Ahrefs, which has a free version that you can kind of use. And even that is enough for me on some days where I'm just like, okay, this is the key information I need and I'm good here. So yeah, that's the only money I can think of that I'm like, ah, this sucked. Like I didn't, but yeah, the only other thing is like page speed optimization. I've been fighting with my page speed recently, which, if you don't know, it's usually indicative if people will say on your site, right? You think about back in the old days where pages used to take forever to load. You get frustrated and you move on, right? Who wants to sit
That's
there
right.
for a while waiting for a page to load if you don't have to? So I've been fighting with that because some plugin changed on my website and I've been trying to make sure that's better, but that's not so much money more. It's just like a time suck of like I could be writing blog posts instead of trying to fix this.
Yeah, it's like editing. Well, there's always tasks that steal our joy. For me, editing videos really steal my joy. I um and it's almost a pleasure pain thing when it comes to the shorts. So if for those of you that have caught any shorts recently, I started spending a lot of time on those where I pick the appropriate music to the tone of the conversation. I try to edit myself out. The guest is always the one, the star of the short. And I listened to, because I had a recording studio back in the late 90s. So I listened to the pace of the conversation. I try to pick music that kind of hits with the cadence. And so there's an unbelievable amount of detail that's going into this recent batch of shorts. I don't know if anybody will ever notice it, and it's painful to do, but when I get done and I hit play that final time to watch all of that work and the cuts and the music, and because I can bring the music up and down during key points, and wow, it's like I feel like a miniature Scorsese for a second there. So I'm proud of that work, but the same thing with a blog. You put all this work into something and you just hope it resonates with somebody, that somebody gets something out of that podcast episode or that message. So do people come to you and say, "Hey, I'm interested in doing this. How do you do what you do?" Where you get an opportunity to mentor someone?
I have a couple people that I will like trade information with or ask like to kind of be my guinea pig because I know that they're kind of in the same boat. So I'll have them like read it and be like, does this make sense to you? Um, but yeah, not like I had a friend who was kind of interested and then she ended up getting another job. So I think she kind of fell off the boat a little bit because she just ran out of time. But mostly I'll just like answer questions on threads or if somebody like reaches out on LinkedIn, I'll usually answer. But yeah, not like big mentoring. But I wanted to say I actually was on a podcast recently and somebody told me they quoted my own quote back to me from a short. And I don't know if it was yours, but they were like, yeah, you were on this other podcast. They had a short and they're like, you said this quote. And I was like, oh, okay. So maybe it might have been one of yours. It
Well,
might
I
have
tell
been.
you, the one where you mentioned the Jonas Brothers, people went crazy over that. I mean, I
Yeah.
I don't know anything about pop culture. I'm definitely not the guy, I'm an autistic savant. I'm not a pop culture guy. But it was amazing. I mean, it was like I don't know, 1,700 views in a month or something, that was an outlier. That was two, because there's two, if my memory serves correct, I cut five shorts from our episode and two of them did amazing. But that Jonas Brothers, because it has in the title, that's something searchable. So anybody who types
Yeah.
Jonas Brothers and they're just looking for a song, boom, they get Michelle Jensen, and and it was a really excited part because you were delivering it really well and people loved it. So it might have been from there. I don't know. Do you have some memory of what the quote was?
It
I
was
might be able to
something
tell you.
about not, you don't have to be like a big TikToker and you don't have to be like this big brand in order to kind of have a platform, if I remember correctly, because
Yeah.
she said it and I was like, that sounds like something I would say. I just don't remember saying that.
I'll rifle through the files and see what's going on.
But she
Well,
definitely said it was a short, so it might have been yours.
I love it. I love it. Well, maybe somebody will catch the shorts from this. And the shorts, I'll do those about a month down the road to give the episode a second life. I wanted to say too, I got very excited when I was looking at your page about the possibility. I know this is a very early stage, but you're planning a book. Can you tell us just a little bit about what's on your mind for that?
Yeah, so I started writing that book during COVID. Just before COVID, a friend of mine, I was complaining that there's not a lot of action adventure novels featuring women. I grew up loving Indiana Jones, Jumanji, watching things like Buffy and Tomb Raider, which are all great, but like there's not a lot of novel version of that. That's not like Outlander, where it's like mostly romance with like some action adventure. And I was like, I don't want that. I just want the fun stuff. And a friend said right before COVID, you should write one. And I was like, hey, yeah, when I got time. And then COVID happened. So I wound up writing it during COVID. And it's it starts out with this woman who basically reclaims art and artifacts, very kind of like Carmen Sandiego style. And she stumbles upon a Maya codex that other people want for nefarious means. So it kind of like leads her into this race to unlock its secrets through like codes, and you kind of feel a little bit like Da Vinci Code style in there and things like that. But yeah, I've been kind of like what they call querying it, which is basically sending it to agents and be like, do you want this?
Well,
So
how much of that
yeah.
manuscript would you consider as complete? 80%, 90% done,
Oh,
or
it's done. Yeah.
it's completely done? Wow.
It took me 7 months to write the first draft, and then I spent about 2 years editing it. And then I sent it to what they call beta readers, which are basically people who offer to read it in exchange for feedback. So, they'll say like, oh, the pacing was slow here. I was confused in this part. I didn't connect with this character, like any kind of like feedback that's going to help you refine your story. So I did that for a while, and then yeah, I started sending it out querying, and that's been like probably almost 2 years now. It's a long process. It's people think you like send it to an agent and they get back to you the next day, and I was like, nah, sometimes I get back to you 6 months later.
Well,
Like,
Joanna Penn is a big influence on me. I think she's a wonderful person, first of all, but she's the queen of self-publishing. She's got, I mean, and she writes fiction, so she's cranking out books like, and like I said, she's just a warm, wonderful person. The kind of person you want to root for to see. You're happy to see that a good person's successful, and she's very generous with her information, and she's got a ton of books about the business, how to publish, how to she's got books just on promoting. So if you do ever want to go down the self-published path, I think her stuff is fantastic. I didn't do it all right, but I would say that's why I did a second edition of my book, because after I had listened to her and a few other people, but really hers was the primary voice, I thought, I need to go back and change some things and do some different marketing. And yeah, I think it's pretty solid. But yeah, publishing, man, that's tough. That's like getting signed as a musician. It can be a journey. So, do you think are you going to wait until that gets picked up and sold before writing something else, or do you have other ideas that you'd like to develop?
so I actually wrote an outline and did all the research for the second one. And that's kind of like what takes me a lot of time is I do very much Da Vinci Code style, where like if you remember the Da Vinci Code, he takes all kind of like real people and like locations and kind of the history of art and things like that and weaves it into his story. So I spent like 2 months researching before I even started writing. And the same thing with this one. I like did research and I did plot, and then I kind of like got so caught up with my travel blog that I was like, I can't, walk and chew gum while writing two things at once. I just can't do it. So I put that on pause. But luckily, the first agent that ever said she was interested in my book, she kind of fell off for about 2 years, and then she looped back last year and said, "Hey, I still remember you. If you're still looking for somebody, can you resubmit in January?" So I did that last month, and I'm waiting to see because I was actually about to start like investigating self-publishing. So it was kind of time and commitment into it. I was kind of like, I don't want to do this. I've got so
Yeah,
much on my plate. So
yeah.
I'm waiting to see what she says before kind of progressing. Because yeah, it's a beast. I applaud you for doing it 2 times over
I had
now.
to I had to narrate the book myself twice, so it's an audio book. I had to reformat it for I had to learn all of that. I didn't know any of it. Now I did get Miblart, shout out to Miblart. I got Miblart to design the book. I had a talented young lady, and I apologize, I can't remember her name. I hired her on Upwork. She did an outstanding job. Kimberly Abuchon, she did the editing of the audio. Now I ran a studio And could I have edited it? Yes, Michelle. But after writing the same book twice and narrating it twice, I was like, I don't, I got to sell these copies, but oh man, I don't, you just get overexposed to your own material. And I needed a break. So Kimberly did a great job listening. I just couldn't listen to myself anymore. I was like, please take this. This is stealing
Yeah.
my joy away. But yeah, I hope you get that published, or if you self-publish, there's definitely no shame in that, because you get, I think, for me, if somebody buys the paperback of Scintilla, I get 60%. And I'm also dropping my affiliate code in there when I'm promoting it. So that's another, what is it? That's 4.5% of the cover price. And then I get 60% of essentially the net, because I think it's $3.12 to print this or something. And the other thing I'll say, and I'm not trying to persuade you in any way, Michelle, but I don't know. I've met several published authors, and I've not met a single one that said, man, I got a great deal from Bantam Books, or I got a great deal from Random House. None of them ever brag about the deal. Maybe they were so good they don't want to tell anybody. Um, but yeah, I think there's an amazing amount of control with that self-published. But I want to end with this. We've had a lot of people on that at some point have lost their YouTube account, have lost their Meta, something has crashed. They got deplatformed for YouTube for a variety. Sometimes they didn't do anything wrong. What things are you doing on social media to try to direct them back to the traffic that you can control? In other words, your main website.
That's a good question. I do not do a lot of social media because I feel it's so volatile for that, partly for that reason. You look at like TikTok, like a lot of people left TikTok when they had the changeover. Like if you had millions of followers on there, what were you doing with them? Hopefully they move somewhere else with you, but like you don't have any guarantee of that. And the other thing is like social media, you can post, like, let's say I post about some trip I took. It like is going to be on people's feeds for what, 2, 3 days, maybe longer if it goes kind of viral, and
Link,
then it
link,
kind of dies off.
LinkedIn, you get 4 hours. I'm writing a book on LinkedIn, and
Yeah.
when I started doing the investigate, I was like, holy smokes! No wonder Gary Vaynerchuk says you got to post 20 times a day. I see social media now as a rapidly moving river, and you throw your little piece of styrofoam that floats on the top, and if somebody's not staring at the river right at that moment when your little styrofoam goes by, it's yeah, 4 hours, Michelle. If people aren't clicking all over your stuff on LinkedIn in the first 4 hours, that you can you can set your clock. It's dead, you know. But
Yeah.
but if somebody later bumps into it and then gets reposted, that can change. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, but that's part of why I love blogging is because I can go back in that post about, 2 days in Athens and say, hey, this pass is no longer available. Instead, I recommend this. And it could give it a chance to jump back up on Google's rather than just going, okay, that post, nobody saw it in those 4 hours. There goes that time. Oh, well.
That's right.
So that's why, and I obviously, as long as I pay my domain fees, I own my website. So like nobody's gonna be like, oh well, we shut off TikTok. We got all rid of all our followers. Like that doesn't happen. So I mean, I have to combat with Google, which sucks. Like as I said earlier in this episode, like Google's been doing some wonky stuff that's really not helping anybody who's a smaller creator like myself. Like a lot of the posts I used to have ranking, now I see like a Reddit or Facebook, and I'm like, you don't need these people. Like these people don't need traffic. People with smaller creators like me would love traffic. But yeah, I don't put my stock in social media just for that reason because it's so volatile and it's so fleeting. And I understand like a lot of people make some like good money on it, but it feels like a hamster wheel in that way that you kind of have to keep going. To your point, you post 20 times a day. When I was spending 4.5 months in Europe, I was not posting every day. I was not doing blogging every day, and I was still making money. So it gives me freedom to like do other stuff rather than just being like, I gotta post, gotta post, gotta post, gotta post.
I love that the hamster metaphor, because I always talk about the cheese, and I'm very kind. I try to be very kind and very nice when I can be on, on social media. But vidIQ, who I love, they're a great company, and I use them for YouTube. And it sometimes will suggest, like, I'll write a title, like I wrote a title for this episode, and it'll say, you know, your title's not really good. Here's a better title, and I'll swap it out. And it's a great service, and they post a lot, and they really know what they're talking about when it comes to YouTube. But they was they wrote something that set me off because they normally like what I say. I say very positive, nice, well thought things. But that day I was on a you know, I was a little upset, and I said, you know, it gets very exhausting having to constantly jump for the cheese because YouTube is making constant changes because you know, YouTube is Google. It's ABC company,
Yeah.
and so they're making us creators. And I understand nothing. We're not in an environment that's never going to change. Business and everything is rapidly moving. But do you have to make major changes every 3 months? Can we just calm down? Can we do one update a year? And yeah, it gets a little exhausting. So I think that's very smart that you are focusing on really just ranking in Google. People are finding you; they're going straight to your site. You don't have to mess around with Meta at all. And you're connecting with people through your newsletter. Is that correct? They give you their email, and then you can stay in contact with. Is that the best way people can make a connection?
Yeah, so I have a newsletter on the main page that's more for people who are like interested in like travel, just traveling, or I'm posting about the book on there and stuff like that too. But there's also a page I have that's like how to make money travel blogging, and that's kind of like a separate newsletter for people who are interested in earning income. And that's where I go a little more in depth about like, hey, I tried this and it didn't work, or I tried this and it worked. As far as being a travel blogger and making money. So as long as you get to Travel Her Story, you'll find both these
Okay, I was
newsletters.
getting ready to say, I was going to say, yeah,
Yeah.
give me that URL. I'll update because we've got your URL for anybody interested. Um, Definitely go to travelherstory.com. I've got the URL. It's clickable right there in the description for this video. Well, thank you so much, Michelle. You were so generous with your time. The 30 minutes goes by so fast. I looked over and I thought, oh man, we're way over time. Was there
That's
anything
all
else? Did I
right.
leave anything on the table? Anything you wanted to share with us?
Not that I can think of, but yeah, if you have any questions and you're listening to this, reach out on travelherstory.com, or like I said, I'm pretty regular on threads, just posting about my income reports. So if you're interested in that, that's a good place to go.
Thank you so much, Michelle. I'll end the stream. We'll continue on Zoom.
Sounds good.
There we go. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much. And
No problem.
if there are any hot questions,